Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Did we not find our caller earlier?
They did not answer, and so hopefully they'll call back in. But
okay,
yeah.
Is the hand still up? Maybe they're back to their phones.
No, it's not.
No. Okay. Well, call in. We'll love to say hello and welcome. We're just honored and delighted to be in this loop where we get to continue this conversation about amazing technology that it's over 2,000 years old now, and it taps into the fact of, what should I say, an understanding of the way the mind works that is and has been lost for centuries. And when we recognize and are able to translate that technology into our modern understanding, it is just, well, first of all, it is so logical and rational. It just makes so much sense. And when you put it to work, you realize that there's just so much missing from the ancient scriptures. There's just so much that, it's like somebody purposely tampered with them in order to make sure that they could not be understood. It's just about that crazy. And so when you, to the first century Aramaic meaning of the words that have been translated by the Greeks into what in many cases is just plain silliness. I mean, literally, so much of it is so far out in left field that you wonder, what was going on? Who did this? Why is this so... In the context of understanding the meaning of the words and the ideas and the concepts in Aramaic, and coming forward to Greek, it's just so ridiculous. When you have, we have blessing today, and how 2,000 years ago somebody had this understanding, it's got to be divine intervention. That's the only way I can imagine it. I mean, today we know through brain research that perception is a construct of the mind. We can go to the CIA and look at their research, and they'll verify that that's true. We can go to the neuroscientist lab, and the lab will tell us this is how the mind works. Perception is a construct of the mind. And go back to the Aramaic, and you hear this man Yeshua saying, don't judge by appearances. What is a perception? It's just an appearance. The mind puts this construct forward as though it's the fact of what's going on in the world, and it just is not. So when you have that understanding, and then you realize that there's a process that is identifiable that drives the mind's constructs, it drives our perception. And then you realize that somebody was smart enough to say, here's how you get the appearances to collapse. Like, where did that stuff go for 2,000 years? Why did a guy, as, short a time after Yeshua taught this information, why did a guy named Paul, who is presented as a primo teacher of his work, why did he not know this? And how do we know he didn't know this? Because he says in his own life, in his own process, why is it the things I would do, I cannot do, and the things I would do, I cannot? He obviously didn't know what Yeshua was teaching just a short time before he appeared on the scene. What happened? It's crazy time. So when you are able to understand and decode that technology and put it to work, everything just changes so drastically, so dramatically, that it's crazy. The number of lives destroyed because this technology was removed almost 2,000 years ago is criminal. Some might ascribe it to some supernatural evil force. I don't know. But I do know that when people live in a state of denial, their minds simply present fraud as truth, and until you know how the mind works, it's indistinguishable. It's like impossible to tell. And the average person says, well, that's impossible to tell, so therefore we'll just stick to what we already know. And, what I know is that I'm in pain and it's all your fault. So, and I am a card-carrying member of the one world universal religion of blame. And so I've got somebody to blame for everything that's wrong in my life. And I just ask everybody to ask yourself the question, do you actually believe that there's somebody in your life, if they would change, your life would get better? Now, 99% of people that I've worked with over the years, the first attention on that question, their answer is yes, of course, if only such and such would. And then they start to work with these tools. And what they find is, when they go in and take responsibility for and remove their pain, that person can do the same stuff and they're not in pain anymore. Sometimes the follow-up thing is that when that person, when they resolve their internal pain, that person out there seems to change. It looks like they are now different. Are they different? Absolutely, yes. But are they different because they've changed? No. They're different because the signals you send to the world have changed, and people respond differently. And so when I take responsibility for what's going on inside of me, when I take responsibility for the fact that my mind can generate this kind of trauma, and that I can resolve that, and when I resolve it energetically, I am no longer calling for that trauma all around me. Back about close to 40 years ago, I keynoted several times at a conference called Global Science. And one year at the Global Science Conference in Colorado, a gentleman named Marcel Vogel showed up with a camera called a Delaware camera. A camera that used a tuning mechanism to attune to frequencies, much like a radio attunes to a radio frequency, and could take pictures of whatever it was tuned to if that frequency was present. So rather than, you click the aperture, you click the shutter, and the aperture opens, and whatever light energy is in front of it is registered on the photographic plate. But this camera, called a Delaware camera, when you clicked the aperture open, when it opened, whatever the tuning device was tuned to, if it was present, that's what would register on the plate. And what Marcel showed us is that he could take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. And we know energetically the universe is governed by the law of resonance. And resonance means energy exchange. So if I hold a particular pattern of I believe I should be abused this way, then I'm going to be setting up a frequency that invites somebody to come and do it. When I change that in me, and that's what forgiveness does, is it allows us to access the hidden parts of our own minds. When I change that in me, one, the disease that was caused by that energy in my physiology disappears. My physiology heals. The emotionally traumatic feelings that I was experiencing based on that hidden information disappear. The signal that I set up that draws people to me to do certain things disappears, and they change because I'm no longer energetically asking for that particular assault. And of course, you might say, well, that assault, I saw them do it. It really was their fault. And I say, yeah, but notice how many times you've been through it. Like, if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, at what point do you start to realize you're the only one that was there every time, and maybe you're involved in your life and isn't all somebody else? And as you take that level and that quality of responsibility, everything changes. So we're here to offer that technology. It's available anytime you want to use it. Please go to our website, whyagain.org. Up in the upper left-hand corner of the home page, there's a link that says Start Here. Click the Start Here link. When you click the Start Here link, it opens up a whole world that will walk you through. Literally everything we know about forgiveness is there. We have accumulated, there are dozens up to hundreds of hours of material that you can walk through, everything that I've walked through over the last 50 years to come to understand this. It's there, it's free, it's available. Please take it and use it. And then if you're engaging in it and you run into questions, pick up the phone and call the show and ask the question. That's what we're here for. Commitment is to make it available. First and foremost, to make it available to you. You can also go to your app store on your phone, type in the words Heartland, Heartland, one word, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. You'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app. You can engage and do the work right there in the app, and it's about its 5th iteration. Thank you, Jeannie, for the genius of putting it together. And one of the features she put in the last iteration was, on every page, there's a link you can click, or a box you can click and ask questions. And those questions will go directly to Jeannie, and Jeannie will read them directly on the show, and we'll answer them, and we'll send you back a link that says, here's where you can find your answer. And, or of course, anytime you wish, you can call into the show. And if you happen to be on one of those stations where we can't see you, the calling number is 563-999-3581. If you call the show, you're listening directly to our conversation. And then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel, and we're having a conversation. And at this moment, there's nothing more that I'd love than to have a conversation with you, to interact, ask questions, get refinements. I will probably learn something new, something even in the decades that I've been working with it, I haven't understood because I haven't had the brain cells to ask the question that perhaps you have. And that's been one of the beauties of this show. That's been one of the beauties of the years that I've been on the road and interacting with people, is I got to ask every question that I was asked. Questions that maybe I'd have never thought of. And somebody goes, well, what about, and I go, oh, never thought of that one. Let's look into how that applies. And so we're here to offer the best information, the best support we can. Now, big resistance comes. When people hear, gee, I can remove all drama and trauma from my system, everybody gets so excited. It's like, yay! Or pretty much everybody. I guess the masochist wouldn't say yay, because, gee, if you're going to get rid of my pain. You know what the true sadist says to the masochist when the masochist says, beat me. The true sadist says no. So if there are people who want to suffer, well, okay, then this isn't the place for you. However, the challenge is, whatever the initiating point is for any form of suffering in your family system, you're going to have to look at it, you're going to have to embrace it, and you're going to have to work through it. And that's the good news and the bad news. Healing is not Dr. Feelgood, but it is so powerful when you really, truly engage it. Just so amazing. And that's another reason for this radio show, so that, as one steps in and does their work, there is a space of support for helping you to move through whatever it is you need to move through. And one of the big things that needs to be moved through in the process of healing is massive amounts of confusion. And so it can be difficult to stay on track when confronted with incongruent energies that need to be worked through. The confusion can become massive. And that's another reason for us being here. If confusion comes up for you in this process, please give us the honor and the privilege of supporting you through it. That's what we're here for. And if you will do us that honor, you will also be honoring anyone else who's listening to the show or will at some time in the future, maybe 1,000 years from now, listen to the show. Fortunately, this digital record will remain. And the opening that you create with your questions and your process, your willingness to go into that healing process, may well be a gift that many, many others get to receive because of the work you do. Great principle in the Course in Miracles: when you are healed, you are never healed alone. Literally, each person who does their work opens the energy space, the energy window for everybody who has the same issue to also work through it. So we're delighted that you're here to be part of the conversation. And Miss Jeannie, do you have anything on your mind today? And or do we have anybody in the phone queue with Hannah?
No, if nobody has a hand up. So I was just thinking, unless somebody pops up with a question, why don't you talk a little bit about the perception and the things that came up in the book club yesterday and share that.
We could do that. And of course, as soon as we get the link, that will be available on our YouTube channel, where you can listen to that live yesterday. But basically, we did chapter 3 in the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And I kind of did an outline of that yesterday with our introduction. But basically, what that chapter looks at is that no matter what your mind is serving up to you, picture, it's only part of the truth. You know, I think I mentioned this the other day, and it's so relevant here. Einstein has this awesome insight. He says the theory you have about a thing determines what you can observe. Now, if you have a theory about the thing called life, that whenever something's wrong, it's somebody else's fault. Whenever I'm in pain, somebody else did it to me. If that's the theory you have, then the only evidence you will get to see is evidence that backs up your theory. You know, the human mind is an evidential device. You know, the research, the lab research from Harvard University showed that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that comes to conscious awareness is 9 bits. So you're looking at a little tiny piece of evidence based on a huge amount of data firing within it. And it's been estimated in that same time frame, which is about a 25th of a second, 10,000 brain cells firing, measurable units of electrical activity, 9 bits go into conscious awareness. It's been estimated that perhaps as many as 20 trillion bits are happening in the actuality. And so if the thesis is somebody else is the problem in my life, holding that theory about a thing, then that's the only thing you'll be able to observe. And you'll have evidence, your mind, if it has to hallucinate it, is going to show you how everybody else is the problem in your life. And it's a shocker when you realize that's a lie. It's a shocker when you collapse that and you get to the point where your mind works with the theory that, oh, everything that happens in me, I'm a part of it. It's a great section in the Course in Miracles on responsibility for sight. Deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge that, but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. I create the world I experience. I decide upon the goal I would achieve, and what happens to me, the Course says, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, and there's a big thing in the culture today about, blaming the victim, shaming the victim. There's no shame, there's no blame in this understanding. All it's saying is nothing happens independent of you. There is no isolated event. So you're a participator. Does that mean you're to blame for what happens? No. Responsibility has nothing to do with blame. It just means energetically you're a part of everything that happens in your life. If you don't see that part, and really the bottom line of this is recognizing that you're a creator. Each one of us is a creator. We're made in the image and likeness of the Creator, and we are creators. And, everybody loves that idea when the creation's going really well, but virtually everybody has somebody else to blame when it's not. And the mind is a liar. If you feed it the theory, no, it's all somebody else's fault. If you have a genetic heritage, if you can remember your power person sitting around whining and crying and complaining about how somebody else is the problem in your life, all you have to do is turn on a TV channel anytime, in the last months, and you'll hear certain people, what appear to be very powerful people, getting up there and whining about how they're the victim, and it's all somebody. And the same conversation we were listening to years ago is happening today. And the only cost of pretending to be a victim is that you have to give up your creatorship, or at least your conscious creatorship. Your creatorship will continue. It will just happen from the unconscious level. And what happens when you engage in forgiveness is you uncover the unconscious parts of your own mind. And when you uncover, and most people, when they uncover something, or when they're told, well, it looks like you're probably going to find something else, they're like, no, if that were true, I'd know it. No, that's why we call it the unconscious. We don't know it. But when you collapse the perceptual constructs of your mind, a la first century Aramaic forgiveness, then you get to uncover things that perhaps your bloodline's been hiding from themselves for 1,000 generations. And so when you realize that everything the mind gives is evidence, and it's evidence on demand, and the evidence has to back up the basic principles which we believe are operative in the universe, then once again, the only thing you ever get to do is see evidence of your own BS. That's, of course, belief system. You might have a different reality for those initials, but BS is belief system. And you're always going to get evidence for your own belief system until you straighten out the belief system to be accurate. The mind can't show you accurate data. It just can't do it. So engaging in forgiveness collapses the false precepts of the mind, the false constructs of the mind, and gives us a chance to access the underlying data and clean it up. So that's the bottom line of this work, and that's what we're all about. So if you're out there in listener land, we've got about 35 minutes for conversation. Let's hear from somebody. How can we support you? What's on your mind? If you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show live. And then if you push 1, if you're listening live, you have a comment, a thought, a question, please share it with us now. What's happening in your life?
We have 33 minutes. We have plenty of time. Press 1, your first
Yeah, rather than waiting till the last minute. Oftentimes the reason why people don't want to look is because of what they're going to find. Albert Einstein says if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. Yes, the mind creates these constructs that makes things look a certain way. And the marker to tell whether or not your mind is telling you something accurate and true, is there pain behind it? And if there's pain behind it, then bring that pain to the presence of love, and that pain will be transmuted. It will be dissolved. If we go to the opening words in the book of John, and I hammer at this one regularly because it's such an important key. It doesn't say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. It says in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. Your structure, your life, is a reflection. If someone, let's say, stood in front of a mirror and had a scar, the reflection would have a scar. Can you fix scars in the reflection? You could put a Band-Aid over it, and it would seem like it wasn't there, but that doesn't eliminate the scar. And so what we're looking to do, rather than put Band-Aids over things, is we're looking to become responsible for, access, and bring forward everything that is out of harmony with the truth, which is out of harmony with who we are as human beings. Wounds held in the mind reflect as anomalies or diseases in the body. So perception and the condition of this quote-unquote body are flip sides of the same coin. There's no separation between them. And the mind, in fact, is a reducing valve. It eradicates, the mind eradicates information that is not relative to the goals you hold at the moment. If you ever sat really engrossed in a book, a dozen things might have gone on around you, but you were not aware of any of them because the focus was so intense on the book that it gated out all other information. There's some interesting research where they took a cat and they literally implanted electrodes in the cat's brain in the area of the brain where sound is registered. Clicking device, and they'd click this device in the cat's ear, and of course the wires that they had implanted in the cat's brain were hooked up to an oscilloscope, and every time the click would go off, the oscilloscope would jump, would show a signal, until they put a mouse in a bell jar in front of the cat. And they could click and click and click away, but there was no sound. I mean, the sound was in the ear, but it didn't get into the brain because the focus was on the mouse in the bell jar. Of course, talks about this principle and says, you must become aware of the distorting power of the way you want it to be. So the mind reduces awareness of information that's not relative to the goals that are active in the mind at the moment. And whatever your mind is set for is what you get to live in, is what you get to swim in continuously. And ultimately, if you really want to heal, then you've got to have behavior and emotional prompts that will make you aware of things that you engage in that don't support your healing. Conscious operation of the mind rather than just letting it run the way it's been programmed by generations and generations of perhaps pained minds. So build into the mind the brain cells for the behavior and the emotional prompts that you want in your life. The kinds of minds that run so many people's lives, or pardon me, the kind of goals that run so many people's lives are based in survival, money, power, fame, winning, possessions, looking good. Oh, success is having lots of money. Really? Big error on that one. Others would define success as being right. So all they want to do is make sure everybody knows they're right. things, possessions, oftentimes goals like showing someone else up, getting ahead, being safe, having the best, sex, food, excitement, looking good, dominance, prestige. If those things are active in a mind, then the only evidence the mind can present are things that will support one having those things. And yet, and those things become the very block to the success that someone's seeking, because their definition of success is somewhere out in left field. If love is squeezed out of awareness by the goals that you're holding, then you better start getting rid of those goals. And ultimately, forgiveness becomes the solution to all of it. Now, some people think the solution is control. And of course, if somebody needs control, what do they have to do? They have to set goals about everything that they need to control. And the mind hits a level of stress where overwhelm happens. It's the canceling of goals that relieves the stress. And the objective of this work is to support people moving into a space where they own a mind and a body system that is fueled by active present love rather than unresolved goals of the culture. So our ultimate objective is to support people in living in a mind that is connected to love 24/7, 365. There is no thing that can make us successful or valuable or worthwhile or good. And your value is established by your identity, and your identity is that of love. At the moment of creation, that was established. And where one does not honor truth, then much information that would support one achieving success will be blocked. If false data occupies a space where truth is designed to be, then one lives in the state that we call blockage of truth. And the natural state of a human being, unless they're living in blockage of truth, is that of joy. So the question to ask yourself is, can something else actually hurt me? And my offering is that short of a punch in the nose, cancel a thought, that's not possible. If someone can give me a look or speak certain words, and I go into pain, they're showing me what's inside of me. They're not the cause of my pain. Pain perceptions come only from pain content. There is no other source. So there's a work to be done, and we're here to provide the tools for that work. And each new depth of the experience of the presence of love, each peak experience, each new level of vitality, and each healing crisis that results from that requires a new level of commitment to do your work, because with each new mountaintop reached, you're empowered to become aware of a new depth of what's within you. Most people who want to live in that connected space of love continuously have no desire whatsoever to take responsibility for and move through what's in them that inhibits them from living in that state they want to live in. And sadly, few people, unless they're properly guided, because of the blocks to maintaining that state, are so painful. You know, in the ancient teachings, it said the gate's narrow. Few will find it. It's because there are generational patterns that need to be faced and healed. We're designed to live in that profoundly sweet, wondrous state called joy. And to achieve that, the genetic and early life traumas that have been unresolved have to be faced, processed through, and removed from the structure. That's the forgiveness work. And life's purpose is to always hone in and show us what it is we need to deal with. And of course, you'll know that it's yours because you're the one who's feeling it. Once one renounces the one world religion of blame, that universal religion, it's all somebody else's fault, ownership of what one is feeling becomes a requirement. And the conversation about others being cause has to come to an end. And at that point, the removal of the power person process begins. And as we said before, that removal process is called forgiveness. Everything unlike your new desired state must be uprooted, faced, and forgiven. If you've ever felt it, you've felt it because it's in you. And you're going to have to feel it at depth to clean it up. And we don't have a choice about what's going to surface. Whatever's there is what's going to surface. And a new level of vitality automatically kicks off the next level of what it is that's going to surface, and nobody knows what that's going to be. So we're here to support each one living in a continuous taste of that sweet presence of love physiologically. And to remove from the mind the traumas that would inhibit us living that way 24/7, 365. Anything that interferes with that state in you has to be dealt with. So we're here to support that happening. And if you're out there in listener land, if you happen to be on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. Push one and let's have a conversation.
There's not a hand up, but so I'll just fill in time here with, I just started reading a book, The Untethered Soul, and the
cool.
First part of
Michael Singer's work.
Yeah, and the first chapter of it talks about, the voice in your head, and that it's always talking, constantly, and he gives some examples of that, but then over towards the end of the chapter, he's got so I'll just read it. Take a moment to examine the difference between your experience of the outside world and your interactions with the mental world. When you're just thinking, you're free to create whatever thoughts you want in your mind, and those thoughts are through the voice. You are very accustomed to settling into the playground of the mind and creating and manipulating thoughts. This inner world is an alternate environment that is under your control. The outside world, however, marches to its own laws. When the voice narrates the outside world to you, those thoughts are now side by side in parity with all of your other thoughts. All these thoughts intermix and actually influence your experience of the world around you. What you end up experiencing is really a personal presentation of the world according to you, rather than the stark, unfiltered experience of what is really out there. This mental manipulation of the outer experience allows you to buffer reality as it comes in. For example, there are myriad things that you see at any given moment, and yet you only narrate a few of them. The ones you discuss in your mind are the ones that matter to you. With this subtle form of pre-processing, you manage to control the experience of reality so that it all fits together inside your mind. Your consciousness is actually experiencing your mental model of reality, not reality itself. You have to watch this very carefully because you do it all the time. You're walking outside in the winter and you start to shiver and the voice says, "It's cold." Now, how did that help you? You already knew it was cold. You're the one who's experiencing the cold. Why is it telling you this? You recreate the world within your mind because you can control your mind, whereas you can't control the world. That's why you mentally talk about it. If you can't get the world the way you like it, you internally verbalize it, judge it, complain about it, and then decide what to do about it. This makes you feel more empowered. When your body experiences cold, there may be nothing you can do to affect the temperature. But when your mind verbalizes, "It's cold," you can say, "Well, we're almost home, just a few more minutes," and now you feel better. In the thought world, there's always something that you can do to control the experience. Basically, you recreate the outside world inside yourself, and then you live it in your mind. What if you decided not to do this? If you decide not to narrate and instead just consciously observe the world, you will feel more open and exposed. This is because you really don't know what will happen next. Your mind's accustomed to helping you. It does this by processing your current experiences in a way that makes them fit with your views of the past and visions of the future. All of this helps to create a semblance of control. If your mind doesn't do this, you simply become too uncomfortable. Reality is just too real for most of us, so we temper it with the mind. Come to see that the mind talks all the time because you give it a job to do. You use it as a protection mechanism, a form of defense. Ultimately, it makes you feel more secure. As long as that's what you want, you will be forced to constantly use your mind to buffer yourself from life instead of living it. This world is unfolding and really has very little to do with you or your thoughts. It's here long before you came, and it will be here long after you leave. In the name of attempting to hold the world together, you're really just trying to hold yourself together. True personal growth is about transcending the part of you that is not okay and needs protection. This is done by constantly remembering that you are the one inside that notices the voice talking. That is the way out. The one inside who is aware that you are always talking to yourself about yourself is always silent. It is a doorway to the depths of your being. To be aware that you are watching the voice talk is to stand on the threshold of a fantastic inner journey. If used properly, the same mental voice that has been a source of worry, distraction, and general neurosis can become the launching ground for true spiritual awakening. Come to know the one who watches the voice, and you will come to know one of the great mysteries of creation.
Become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. Get right on, being able to observe. And recognizing that one is not the persona, the personality that's made up by the mind. Or something far greater than that. So that would be, in the context of Mickey's writing, would be the objective of this work as well. To move to the point that it's you who's living the life rather than the mind that's narrating the life. That's a good way to say it. Cool, sweet. Thank you, Michael. Years ago when I knew him, he was known as Mickey. I guess that's his nickname. Good stuff. And we've got about 12
So we
minutes
got a hand.
left. Awesome. Let's say hello. Cool.
It's Ann, 760. You're on the air. What you doing?
Welcome, young lady.
Hey, well, thank you. Yeah, I've been gonna share this. I've been gonna send this cartoon to you for a long time, and I still will. But I want to speak it and set the picture because it kind of goes with what you were just reading and what you were saying before that, Michael. I call it's a classic Peanuts cartoon that Charles Schulz had in the newspaper, and
Right.
it's old because the newspaper print is getting turning kind of yellow. But I had taped it onto a piece of paper that I was going to attach to an email, and so now that I'm speaking it, I will follow through with it, right? Anyway, I've titled it The Ultimate Blame Game. Okay, so
Right.
the first little picture is Charlie Brown is flying his kite, and you don't see the kite, but you see the string up in the sky, right? And he's looking up at it. And the next picture,
Right.
big capital letters, crash. Kite comes down, crashes, busts all the pieces, right? The next picture, he's looking at it, of course, with the the sweat, the tears. He's so sad, and there's smoke coming up from the kite. The next picture is he's walking home, very dejected, very sad. And he goes and he stands in the next picture as he sees the television. He says, he never says anything, and then the next picture, he's sitting in front of the television. It's like, okay, I'm just saying, all right, we're going to use the television to deal with your sadness, right? Anyway, the next picture, he's taking his shirt off, getting ready for bed. Next picture, laying in bed. Next picture, he's turning to one side. His eyes are opening. Next picture, he's sitting up in bed. Sorry. Next picture, he's slowly walking through the house. Last picture, in capital letters, exclamation mark, he opens the house door and yells outside, "Stupid kite!"
Yep.
So, I mean,
Now I feel better.
Look for something to blame.
Oftentimes, Jeannie and I are in the evenings. We usually watch a movie, and oftentimes there'll be somebody that does something, something isn't going their way, and they'll turn around and smash a glass or break a picture or break a window. So like, well, that's really bright. So you just destroyed some of your own property because something didn't go your way. It's like some of the responses we have are pretty crazy.
I mean, it's just so perfect because how many times have we not gotten rid of the goal that we had? And it's like, the whole cancel your goals before you go to bed for, that waking day. And you lay awake, still thinking
Right.
about them. If you don't, I can only speak for me, but, you suggest that. And so it's such a perfect scenario, that he's laying in bed. And, okay, so it's not a person, but we do the same thing with not only with people, but with things like you just gave the example of. It's like, well, it's the dish's fault that it fell. Oh, so now like you said, well, now I'm going to throw something or I'm going to bang the cupboard, which will vibrate the dishes in there and something else will fall out and break. Or, our responses to it. Anyway, I just had to share that one. So thank you again.
And there's that old saying that says that it's sometimes hard to remember that the objective was to drain the swamp when you're up to your butt in alligators.
Yeah.
And, if we forget that the objective is to live as a human being, to actually live as the presence of love, then the mind can go on all kinds of crazy tangents that are just reflections of generational patterns. It's like time to let them go.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that humorous interlude. Other than that, how are things in your world?
They're good. I'm still working on, I'm still working on resistance.
Right.
Right now, I think it's a lifetime journey, but hopefully not. But it's a journey to overcome the resistance to do the work. And it's just like you've said over and over, when, it works when you work it. Well, step programs are great for that phrase. I've been working on the whole thing of everything that happens is a gift, like some of the readings that Dr. Tim has been doing. And
right.
And it really lessens the stress. Like, okay. And so I know I'm continuing to heal when I don't spend as much time in the event that happened, and I start looking sooner and sooner, and I can look back over the years and think, oh, I carried that one for a long time, and now sometimes it's only a few minutes, and I start thinking, okay, what's the good out of this? And, am I playing a part for somebody else, or is what just happened for me? And it's just so much better. It takes a lot of practice, and it's like you've said, we don't heal this overnight when we've been carrying some of this stuff for a long time. And it's
right.
just
If
so
only
much
Peanuts
more
had gotten
freeing.
in that cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Rolling around in bed and finally getting up and shouting out the door.
Right. Like,
And the power.
And the fact that the kite is a thing and it's already kind of messed up, right?
Right.
The blame. Anyway, that's why the ultimate blame game. So it doesn't do any good for me to, and God had started working with me on traffic a long, long time ago, so I don't have as much issues with traffic and people doing things that I wouldn't do, or they haven't learned to be a better driver on the road and think of other people. However, the other day, just the thought came in my head, and I go, oh, wait. The only difference between that thought and me voicing it is that it's in my head, is that I didn't voice it out loud, right? And I go, okay, so that's the next level, right? But I don't even need to think that thought if I want to stay in love. So it wasn't a horrible thing that, it's probably just coming over and not signaling or something like that. It was like, oh, but I immediately changed my thought. Oh, okay. It's just part of driving. I mean, it happens all the time. Why I get upset about it?
Right.
I just need and it goes back to, the whole awareness thing, right? If I'm the one who's getting better at being aware, then I'm prepared. And so what can be wrong with that?
Nice. Very cool.
Anyway.
Very sweet. You remind me of my
that's
mom when she used to live in a place where she oftentimes had to cross a railroad track, and oftentimes would get stuck at the tracks with the train going through, and she'd just be very frustrated and upset, and like, "Nyeh." And so we talked about that and the canceling the goal, and it was sometime later, but she said, now, she said, I'm realizing that I'm actually in charge of what my mind does. What I do is I keep a book in the car. She loves to read. I keep a book in the car. And when the train is blocking the road, she said, I appreciate it. I have time to read my book. It's like just a total turnaround. So simple, but a total turnaround from frustration and agitation to, oh, I could be in charge of my mind instead of blaming a train for the way I'm using my mind to create frustration and upset.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
definitely
That's perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Good for her.
cool.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks, again, and for all you do, and have a blessed day. Weekend.
All right, young lady. Appreciate you. Lots of love and blessings. Take care. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. The world needs it. You can give it. Blessings. Bye-bye.